I just want to spend a couple of minutes on the role of the CIO, because I think this is important. Randy, you could start off by telling us, how are CIOs thinking about their roles today, given all the global changes, the global forces, not only from a technology standpoint, but from an organizational standpoint, which is something that Brian alluded to earlier?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a technology job. It's a business job. I spend all of my time talking with my business counterparts. I spend, well, that's probably not true, but maybe 5% of the time talking on making sure we're doing things the right way. But I have just as many meetings with marketing as I do with IT. The business units and the executive team is more important, honestly, than my own teams, because we're having to make sure the business is run the right way. I can get what they want taken care of usually, but and I don't think this has changed in the last 10 years. It shouldn't have. I mean, if you understand the roles of the other people in the organization, how you can support them, the CIO is always in charge of strategic value. And if you're able to attach strategic value to what you're doing, then it doesn't matter what the technology is, it doesn't matter what the market forces are, that's what you're always looking to do. And I mean, I can't say it any simpler than that. That's the way I see it.
Now, Brian, there's been a lot of debate about the role of the CIO and what role they play in organizations. And a lot of that is shaped around how CIOs should be more business-minded, more forward-thinking.
Right.
So talk a little bit about what the role of the CIO should be. How are they going to continue to add business value and improve performance of the organization as a whole?
It's funny timing, too, because I'm doing a presentation tomorrow at a CIO conference, and the only title I could think to name it is what the C-suite really thinks of you. So I have research and a lot of anecdotal information about what CEOs, CFOs, COOs, and other CMOs you mentioned, or marketing, what they think of IT. So a lot of CIOs in the room have probably been through this situation where you come into a new role and you're kind of looking, you're talking to your business partners or your other partners inside the organization, and you say, what do you think of the IT organization? And you hear it's too slow, it's too expensive, it's too cryptic, right? We don't speak your language. It's not innovative enough. And you say, okay, I got a lot of work to do. So it's interesting because every time I sort of make that presentation, I kind of come up with new pieces of advice based on what other CIOs have done well. And I feel like I'm changing it all the time because there is this just sort of constant upheaval in the role itself. I think that at its foundation, the most important thing a CIO can be is, like Randy said, I mean, it's a business role, it's a strategy role, and you have to be a translator. You have to be able to help people understand not only what the technologies are and what they can offer or what they can bring to a company, but help them understand where they can do that. Help the business executives get their arms around the idea of how technology can actually power something. I know that sounds really basic. I know that sounds really elementary, but there's still so much of that not going on out there that I think just coming back to the foundations of it is really important. Particularly at smaller organizations where things are sort of moving fast, and in a lot of cases people are used to certain ways of things being done. CIO can very easily become sort of commoditized along with their organizations. They can easily become just sort of placed off to the side as a utility manager. And the minute that happens is the minute you should look for a new job, because that's not where anybody wants to be. So you have to be the one who can identify where the company can make strategic gains from technology, and then how that technology can actually enable the business to get to where they need to be. So I think that's a simplistic view of looking at it. We can get into a lot deeper detail. I don't want to get into the whole prognosticating about what the I in CIO really means. As a chief information officer, chief innovation officer. I mean, there have been so many predictions of what the role is going to be called, and what the I should stand for, or whatever else. I think it's more important. Most of those predictions have been wrong over time, I'll add. But I think it's more important to really zero in on what are the most essential pieces of the role. And I think it's going to get more interesting, I alluded to before. I think it's going to become more interesting over time. As you said, as more and more companies start to call themselves technology companies. A lot of the time it just seems like that's in vogue to do, and they're not actually technology companies, but you see a lot of big shifts going on right now, and a lot of companies are changing the way that they do things and who they actually are, or what they actually are. And I think so a CIO in that regard, in that environment, takes on a whole different sort of challenge. The other interesting thing, I think, is just a generational shift of, when you think about the next generation of C-suite executives who are sort of coming up the ranks now, they may not have grown up with technology. They might not be fully digitally native, but they've grown up in their careers with technology, with a lot of technology. And they've seen the arc of change. They've seen the maturity. They've seen all kinds of different things happen. So it's not people who get used to working on older legacy technologies and are in love with them. They've seen things change so much over time. They're going to bring a totally different perspective when they become your COO or your CEO. They know a lot about technology, probably a lot more than their predecessors did, so they're going to have a different set of expectations for the CIO and for what an IT organization should be. So everybody should be looking ahead, too, to sort of what is that pivot going to look like, and what is that transition going to look like.
Now, Joe, some say the whole idea of technology departments with their own chiefs is a remnant of the 20th century. Do you agree? And what place do you think IT and technology should have within organizations?
Well, I absolutely agree. And I think it starts with the name. I think as you've just heard this discussion, I think it would serve all CIOs if they came up with a new title. Because the idea of the word chief gives one connotation to many of the business organizations. And I think it just continues the path that's been established, say, over the last 20 years. And I think you've heard Brian and Randy talking about stuff. You really want to move away from that. Your job is to be a partner. If they have a business problem, you have a business problem. You can't get away from that. You've got to be able to provide not just the technology solutions, but can you be part of the solution to the problem that an organization within your organization is faced with, and how do you do that? So, the idea of the traditional organization definitely has to evolve, and you have to look at sort of like yourself as a front end and a back end. When you think about security, someone's still going to have to take care of the security, and someone's going to have to just make sure that whatever it is, the primary information of the organization is maintained, is safe, and can be utilized when it needs to be. But there are so many opportunities in organizations. You have to evolve the organization. You have to have leadership people in the jobs. They can't just be technologists. They can't just be thinking about what's the next release from Cisco or whoever or Microsoft. They got to be thinking about what's the function that the organization is going to get out of this. And you'll see a lot more of that. And I think you're seeing those changes in the people you deal with. And it's tough for us to think about it, but maybe in some cases, whatever this role will be called in the future, maybe sometimes it should come from a business person. Because as you just described, most of the business people are using as much technology as each of us as CIOs are using today. And so they're not afraid of it anymore. It's not that thing in the back room. It's not locked up. It's not those people, oh my God, what are they doing now? How many times have we been confronted with that? Are they going to get in the way of what we need to do? So, those doors are opening. They're being broken down. But you have to look at what type of person, what almost is the training. And the more you come to situations like we're doing today, we're not talking about any products up here. And I don't think anyone's going to want to talk about products today. We're talking about learning. We are referring to opportunities, but they're all around what the underlying technology will bring to the table.
Well, thank you very much to our panelists for that discussion. I hope everyone got something out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.